just fine before I met you. I drink too much and that's an issue, but I'm okay.
Hello guys, my name is Wana Wesley.
Tell your friends it was nice to meet them, but I hope I never see them again.
Hello guys, my name is Eric Ricardo sendiri.
I know it breaks your heart. Moved to the city in a broke down car. 4 years no
My name is Giovanni Samuel Mukawano.
Good day, press universe. Welcome from Book 11. And in this video, we are going to explain about chapter 12, which discuss about controversies in trade policy.
Use the references from our first month book, which the title is International Economic and Theory.
This video is for our final project, International Economic subject, that's lectured by Memeti Susilo.
Therefore, don't forget to like and share with your friends. Book 11, boom! This chapter describes about 3 controversies over international trade that have arisen since past quarter century ago. I'm going to explain about the part of sophisticated arguments for activist trade policy. Economists have identified that there are 2 kinds of market failures that seem to be present and relevant to the advanced countries' trading policy. One of them is the inability of highly technology industries to capture all of the benefits of the knowledge that is spilled over to other countries. And the second one is the presence of monopoly profits in highly concentrated oligopolistic industries. Firm in an industry generates knowledge that can be used by other firms without paying any fee for it. It means that this firm is producing some extra output that is called as positive externalities. Why it's called as positive externalities? Because all of the firms can use these externalities without paying any fee for it. They don't have to pay any cost. And usually, high technology industry firm, they devote all of the resources to increase the technology, to improve the technology, and either it's by spending on research and development or taking any initial losses by producing some new products, by having new experiences in processing process. To explain about the part of sophisticated arguments for activist trade policy. Economists have identified that there are 2 kinds of market failures that seem to be present and relevant to the trade policy of advanced countries. One of them is the inability of high technology industries that can capture all of the contribution to knowledge that spill over to the other firms. And another one is the presence of monopoly profit in a highly concentrated oligopolistic industries. Another one is the presence of monopoly profit in highly concentrated oligopolistic industries. While firms can take some benefits of their own investment in knowledge, usually they cannot appropriate it fully. Some of the benefits accrue to other firms that can imitate the ideas and techniques of the rivals. In electronics, for example, it is not uncommon for the firms to reverse engineer the rivals' designs, taking apart their rivals' product, and then they try to figure out how the products work and how they will made. It happens because there is a very big protection for the innovators. In fact, not all of the innovators use the incentive to motivate them to do more innovation. Government has a problem in determining which company to subsidize. There is no reason for the government to subsidize the company that already has high technology industries. On the other hand, innovation and technological spillovers happen to some companies that are still having high technology. A general principle is that trade and industrial policy should be targeted specifically on the activity in which the market failure occurs. Now, Let us move to the second market failure, which is imperfect competition and strategic trade policy. It is proposed by economists named Barbara Spencer and James Clement of the University of British Columbia. The argument identifies the market failure that justifies government intervention as the lack of perfect competition. In some industries, they point out that there are only a few firms in effective competition. Because of the small number of the firms in the assumption of fair competition do not apply. In particular, there will typically be excess return, which is the firm will get the profits when they produce above the investment. There will be also an international competition between the domestic industry and also between the international industry to get the profits. By deterring investment and production from the foreign competitors, it can raise the chance for the domestic companies to gain more profit. And for the details information, for the analysis of the Brother and Spencer, it will be explained in our next slide, in our next video.
Okay, so next I will be talking about globalization and low wage labor. Nowadays, in the globalization era, the rise of manufactured products in developing countries for exports has been one of the major shifts in the world economy over the last generation. No surprise that the workers who produce the manufactured goods for exports in the developing countries is less paid. Majority workers in developing countries are paid less than $1 per hour. Even in some conditions is less than 50 cents per hour. So, should be poor workers and poor working condition would be the concern. And is it good that we must erase the globalization from this world? Okay, so next I will talk about anti-globalization movement. What is anti-globalization movement? As the name says, anti-globalization movement is a group of people who doesn't agree about the name of globalization itself. They think that globalization makes the workers in the developing countries and also developed countries even more poorer and poorer. So, this anti-globalization movement grabbed the world headlines in November 1999 in Seattle. So, at that time, there are a conference meeting of World Trade Organization. Okay, so the purpose of this meeting itself is to start another trade round about the international business. So the anti-globalization movement before this meeting discovered that the clothes that sold in Walmart that endorsed by a well-known artist at that time were produced by a very poorly paid workers in Honduras. Because of that, the anti-globalization movement created a demonstration to disrupt the meeting. In the end, the meeting that held in Seattle in 1999 was regarded as a failure. most experts in trade policy believe that this meeting will fail, even though there's an absence of the demonstration itself. Thanks to that, the anti-global globalization movement achieved at least to disrupt the important international conference. In other words, anti-globalization movement had become a highly visible presence. So, is it right about the anti-globalization movement? Okay, so the next I will talk about trade and wage revision. So, the activists pointed to the very low wage earned by many workers in developing country export industries. These critics argued that the low wage and the associated poor working conditions show that, contrary to the claim of free trade advocates, globalization was not healthy. Workers in developing countries. For example, some activists pointed to the example of Mexico maquiladoras factories near the United States border that have expanded rapidly following the signing of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Wages in those factories were in some cases below $5 per day, and the conditions were appealing by United States standards. Opponents of the Free Trade Agreement argued that by making it easier for employers to replace high-wage workers in the United States with lower-paid workers in Mexico, the agreement had hurt labor on both sides of the border. In the equilibrium after trade, the relative wage rate of United States and Mexican workers will be somewhere between the relative productivity of workers in the two industries. For example, United States wage might be 4 times Mexican wage. Thus, it would be cheaper to produce low-tech goods in Mexico and high-tech goods in the United States. A critic of globalization might look at this trading equilibrium and conclude that trade works against the interests of workers. The point of this example is not to reproduce the real situation in any exact way. It is to show that the evidence usually cited as proof that globalization hurt workers in developing countries is exactly what you would expect to see even if the world were well described by a model that says that trade actually benefits workers in both advanced and developing countries.
So I will explain about third part, which is the globalization and the environmental effect. So the concerns about human impacts on the environment are growing in much of the world and can turn this concern into growing role in domestic politics. The environmental issues are also playing a growing role in disputes about international trade as well. Both production and consumption often lead as byproduct to environmental damage. Factories emit pollution into the air and sometimes dump effluent into rivers. Farmers use fertilizer and pesticides that end up in water. Customers drive pollution-emitting cars. As a result, other things equal economic growth, which increase both production and consumption, leads to greater environmental damage. The idea that as a country income per capita rises due to economic growth, in initial effect is growing damage to environment. Thus China, whose economy has surged in recent decades, is in effect moving from point A to B as the country burns more coal in its power plants and produces more goods in its factories. It emits more sulfur dioxide into air and dumps more effluent into the river. In effect, Alam has become a pollution haven. Thanks to international trade and economic activity that is subject to strong environmental controls in some countries can take place in other countries with less strict regulations. Some activist groups are very concerned about the problem of pollution havens. In the environmental group, Greenpeace made a views celebrate of Alam, demanding that higher environmental standards be imposed.
Nothing I can see but you when you dance, dance, dance. Feel good